For weeks now, the news has been dominated by just a few stories, and not one of them has been about Britain's vote to leave Europe. A nerve gas attack on two people in the beautiful city of Salisbury has dominated not only the British news, but the international media, and it has revived once again the prospect of a confrontation between Russia and the West. Alongside this has been a continuing story about the use of information gleaned from social media, specifically Facebook, and said to have been used to influence the way people vote in an election, specifically the 2016 presidential election in America. Both these continuing stories, if true, carry heavy consequences for everyone. It brings perhaps into perspective the issue about which Milan and I spend our daily lives trying to educate and influence people, namely that alcohol-related brain damage is not uncommon, it is not recognized particularly at inception when it is curable, and that people who get Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome are treated incorrectly by the system, which often makes the condition worse than it needs to be. The consequences of this for the person and the immediate family are so catastrophic that even the thought of worrying about international events would almost be a pleasure. Let me give you a scenario with an imaginary couple. They have been married for some 30-odd years. Their two children now have their own partners and live away from home. It is perhaps time, having been parents for half their lives, for them now to do things again just for themselves. But they are set in their ways and are unlikely to change. Both drink and enjoy a bottle of wine at the end of the day. David, my imaginary man, has become increasingly more difficult to live with. He is more argumentative, more grumpy. He can't find things and swears that his wife has moved them just to annoy him. It has reached a stage where she is never sure which husband she is going to spend the day with, Mr. Grumpy or Mr. Reasonable. So her reaction towards him is changing too. She is more cautious, less chatty. She does not want to put herself in a position where she thinks she is the cause of his mood swings. After some nagging, she gets David to go and see the doctor. She wants the GP to know about his moods, and she is worried about a fall he had, and she has noticed that sometimes he now walks with a limp. David insists on seeing the doctor by himself and promises that he will mention these things to the GP. When he sees the doctor, he walks without a limp, and when the doctor asks him how he is, he says that he is fine. He tells him that he has a slight cough, but this is probably because he is a bit run down and he has been working hard lately. The doctor listens to his chest and takes his BP, and David insists that he is fine and does not remember any of the things that he promised his wife he would mention. The doctor does not ask David about his level of drinking, but if he had, David would have lied anyway. David answers the questions lucidly, and the GP sees no cause for concern. It is 2 days later when David has another fall at home. This time his wife cannot move him, and against the wishes of her husband, she calls for an ambulance. They insist on having him checked, and although complaining, he still goes with the paramedics. It is now that they find he needs a detox, and so he spends a few days in hospital. Talking to social workers, he tells them he is fine, and with a supportive wife he will be able to manage perfectly well at home. Although in reality he is unable to make decisions about his own safety, and he is unable to manage himself, but he is lucid, and the question of his capacity does not rise. What is never discussed is that his wife does not want him home. She does not mention his aggression towards her. She can no longer cope with him, and she is fearful of the future. But she's been married for 30 years, and it's not an easy thing to throw away. Besides, David is very convincing and believable, and he would challenge her version of events, and that she is not yet ready to do. Eventually, David will return to hospital, and his mental condition will be realized. Even then, the diagnosis could still be suspected Korsakoff's. By then, of course, for David, it will be too late. The clock on his life will now be ticking. All this could have been avoided if the relationship between alcohol and reality was better understood. If what happened to a Russian couple in Salisbury should end in a confrontation between Russia and the West, and a Facebook page supplies information on which to make electoral decisions, matters of concern for everyone. For David and his wife, it would still be of little significance.